Good day, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Letty Janse van Vuren, and a warm welcome to the technical summary video of the Information Regulator's PAIA Manual. Looking at the contents, we're going to start off with a quick little introduction, just basically looking at why this is important and how it applies to you and your clients. Then we'll be looking at what's been issued by the regulator in terms of their own PAIA manual, the PAIA guide, and then PAIA template manuals or manual templates that are available for your use. And then just quickly ending off with a short conclusion. In terms of the abbreviations that I use, the first one is PAIA, is the Promotion of Access to Information Act, the one of 2000. Then when I say InfoReg, or you see InfoReg on the slides, it stands for the Information Regulator of South Africa. POPIA is the Protection of Personal Information Act of 2013. As part of an introduction, the relevance to you and in your capacity as an auditor or independent reviewer or accountant. Why do you need to worry about the PAIA manual? I mean, it seems so odd. When you advise your clients during your interaction with the information regulator or their interaction with the information regulator, you need to know how to obtain information from the regulator. The regulator has information that you want. If you need it, you need to know how to go about getting it. Right. So that's in your capacity as an auditor, as an information officer of your entity, of your public body, of your private body, whichever one. Then in terms of being an individual, as an individual, you also need to know how to exercise your right to get your hands on the information that the regulator holds. Then, very important, you should have your own PAIA manual. So even though this is all about the Information Regulator's PAIA manual, you need to know that you must have your own one. When must you have it? How must it look? What must be in there? We will look at that in slightly more detail just a little bit later. Then in terms of the relevance to your clients, very important. Obviously, it gives them the right to access information. So that's what PAIA is all about. PAIA actively promotes a society where anybody has effective right or access to information, because that's our constitutional right. Each of your clients should have their own PAIA manual. So I think if they understand that there is one for the information regulator, they need to know that wherever they need to obtain personal information from, then they need to access a PAIA manual somewhere. If they want information from anybody on a website, they should have a Section 51 manual. You'll also hear people talking about a Section 51 manual instead of a PAIA manual. Right. What was issued by the information regulator is the PAIA manual that relates specifically to the information regulator as a public body. Then there's also a PAIA guide which goes hand in hand with the PAIA manual, because you can't read one without reading the other. But the PAIA guide is created for the public, right? Then there's the PAIA manual templates, one for a public body, one for a private body, that's been created in Word for anybody's use. So gone are the days where you've got to buy PAIA manuals from everybody and it's this 57-page document. I think there's like a 12 or a 14-page document that they've given us to use. So that's all that we need to have in there. So now we're going to look at each one of those in slightly more detail. The Info Regulator's PAIA manual is basically transparency, as they say in the manual. Transparency is one of the basic values and principles that govern public administration. And because the Information Regulator is a public body, they've had to prepare a manual in terms of Section 14 of PAIA. You'll hear people talking about a Section 14 manual. When they talk about a Section 14 manual, that is a public body's manual. When they talk about a Section 51 manual, that is a private body's manual. Right. So the PAIA manual was prepared here. It was issued in June. They only uploaded it onto their website now in November. It consists of 75 pages, and there's what it looks like. Right, that's the front page of the PAIA manual. The manual is available in English, Sesotho, and Afrikaans. I've given you the link to download the PAIA manual there, so it's available for your use. If you've attended any of the other webinars, you would have received the PAIA manual with all the templates and everything. We'll talk more about that towards the end. All right, but this is the manual. Let's go and have a quick squiz at what's inside the manual, because I'm not going to go through the PAIA manual in detail with you. Remember, this is the technical summary. So if you want more, then we'll have to do a 1 or a 2 hour webinar on this. In terms of the important things, they're talking about what the structure, what the duties and the functions of the regulator is. So first of all, they talk about obviously what's the purpose of the manual, and then the manual that the person belongs to. What is their structure? Where are they situated? And what are the contact details for when we want to access information from them? What are the remedies available in terms of PAIA if they are not complied with? How to use PAIA and how to obtain access to the guide. That's our PAIA guide that I've decided to take out separately and provide that to you as a separate slide with a link. Very important, number 11, categories of records held by the Information Regulator. This has to be done by everybody. All right, that's one of the things that will take you the longest when you've got a manual. But they've had to look at specifically what information do they have and how to put it forth so that anybody can access that. All right. Procedures for access. So what are the forms that must be filled out? What is the processing? What information do they process? Are there any prescribed fees? Because not all information requests lead to fees being payable, but there are prescribed fees, so it's very important that you include this. How available is this manual? And then what happens if there's no records? What happens with that? And what happens when records are disposed of? And very important, the updating of the manual. But I mean, that's it. In a nutshell, they didn't have to go and buy a lot of time from somebody to go and customize this for them. Not at all. The PAIA guide, there's a small little screenshot of what it looks like, but you'll see it looks very much the same. All the Information Regulators documents are branded. All right. The PAIA guide was issued in October in all 11 official languages. So 59 pages is this document. All right. The PAIA manual must be read in conjunction with the guide. And the reason why they've given us the guide is to give information to people who need to exercise their right. Now, they talk about the right contemplated in PAIA and in POPIA. So the guide is a little bit wider than just PAIA, because PAIA now, remember, the PAIA regulations have just been updated. They've been amended, and they've been amended to include references to POPIA. Remember, what the Information Regulator is there to do is to regulate both PAIA and POPIA. They basically do what the SAHRC, the South African Human Rights Council, did previously. All right. So the guide will specifically assist a person who is called a data subject here on how to access their personal information. There's the link to the English guide, and you can access the guide also in the 10 other official languages, right, on the website. So there's the link there. I've given you everything. Right. So accessing the guide in any of the other 10 languages, feel free to go and download them if you want. But remember, this is the guide on how to interpret and how to use the Information Regulator's PAIA manual, not the templates. When we get to the templates, there's one thing that we've got to remember first. These are templates now that are available to use for the public. Anybody out there can use this. So there is a current exemption on the compiling of PAIA manuals. Who is currently exempt? Well, SMMEs, meaning entities with less than 50 employees in certain industries. When the document was gazetted, the exemption was gazetted now in June. It gave the exemption until the 30th of December 2021. Now remember, since PAIA came into effect in the year 2000, The first exemption from compiling the manuals was specifically for 10 years. Then there was another exemption granted for 5 years, and then there was another one granted for another 5 years. And then last year, December, there was one issued for 6 months because they said, well, you know what, the information regulator is taking over. They're a new body coming into being. Let's give them 6 months before they've got to start worrying about where to upload PAIA manuals to. Because previously, PAIA manuals were compiled and they were uploaded to the SAHRC's website. So nobody is ready to receive that yet from the information regulator. So therefore, they extended this exemption again until the 30th of December. So essentially, this has been exempted for 21 years. And they did indicate that there will be no further exemptions. It was gazetted, which means that from the 1st of January, all private and public bodies must compile a manual. So there's no more exemptions. As it stands at the moment, in the gazetted notice of June, if you go and have a look at the categories, if you, for instance, had an entity, or you are an entity, and you operate within the manufacturing industry. In the manufacturing industry and your turnover is less than, I think it was, let's say 30 million rand. So if you're in the industry and it's less than 30 million rand your turnover, then you are exempted from compiling a manual. You're not exempt from submitting the manual. You're exempt from compiling a manual. But as soon as this exemption ends, everybody needs to have these manuals. So I don't know what everybody's going to do on New Year's Day, because that's the 31st of December. You're exempted until the 31st, and they have said that from the 1st of January, they can go and monitor who's got manuals and who doesn't. But at the moment, remember, they don't have the capacity yet to upload the manuals. So they won't know, and they can't smell at this stage, so who's got a manual somewhere in South Africa and who doesn't. So we'll look at that because there is some form of relief in there, okay? But to do this, there are 2 templates available. They've been created and they are available in Word format so that it's easy for you to customize. There's a 14-page document for a public body that's been created in terms of Section 14, a 12-page document, 12 pages in terms of a Section 51 private body manual, and there's your links to download it. Okay, those are the links to the docx ones. And remember, it says here, the info regulator confirmed now, they did confirm recently, that submissions of PAIA manuals will not have a deadline until further notice. So the submissions, there's no deadline. So in other words, you don't need to submit it by now. You don't need to submit your manual. You don't need to upload it anywhere. The Information Regulator's website, they're still busy getting ready for the registration of information officers. So their website can't handle all of these uploads yet. So until further notice, you should just have a manual. From the 1st of January, you must compile your manual and keep it. All right? Keep it, and when it is gazetted that now we need to upload it, well, then the whole country will upload their manual. All right? But that's exactly what needs to happen. So you don't have to upload now, but you must have, from the 1st of January, you must have that manual. So in closing, what do I want to say to you? Ensure that your firm or your practice has compiled your PAIA manual by the 1st of January. If not, I said there, this will not be monitored immediately, so you've got some breathing space. But it's got to be done. It's not negotiable. So very important, you must have it. Same for you and your clients. For your clients, you're the same thing. Your clients will also need to have one from the 1st of January 2022. If you are performing any assurance engagements, so audits, independent reviews, other assurance engagements, you're going to have to evaluate and document in your working paper file whether or not your client has compiled a PAIA manual. So for all your Feb 2022 year ends, this will be an additional tick on your working papers. Client, do you have a PAIA manual compiled? Yes or no? Has it been submitted? Yes or no? If you've compiled it, is it compiled in the correct format? Why? Because in your capacity as an auditor or independent reviewer, And in fact, as an accountant, it is NOCLAR. NOCLAR stands for non-compliance with laws and regulations. So if your client does not have a PAIA manual, it's a contravention of PAIA. And that will lead to you having to report on that. If the mere fact that they don't have a manual, depending on how serious it is, you then have to go into your little reportable irregularity box. If it's an audit, you'll report it onto IRBA. If it's an independent review, you'll report the reportable irregularity to SIP-C. But very important, depending on the definitions of reportable irregularity, you will then need to decide whether or not to report it as an RI. If not, you might just have a reporting responsibility to your client. To say to them, listen, Mr. Client, don't know if you're fully aware of this, but from the 1st of January, you were supposed to have your manual. And then you're in a position now to say, look, you don't have a manual. Can somebody help you? We do have a separate division that is independent from us when we perform audits and independent reviews, because there must be independence, and they can gladly assist you with a compilation of your PAIA manual. And then you can use those PAIA manuals that is available, that's been published by the Information Regulator, free of charge. All right. So very important. There's nothing that says you've got to have a manual now, but at least now you know after today's technical summary video that there is a PAIA manual that's been issued by the Information Regulator about their information that they process and about how to go ahead with getting your hands on their information. And by looking at that, it will give you an idea of how to do yours. If you still need more detail, we have a couple of options available. We've got our monthly newsletter that we'll be publishing. It contains also technical alerts that are published daily. You can follow SA Accounting Academy on LinkedIn for that. We still do have webinars on demands, wide variety of topics, not always live events. And if you find that after today you need a webinar or you want a 2-hour or even just a 1-hour webinar on this topic, please feel free to contact us on the SAAA website. Contact us, send us an email, and we can then get together and make one for you. We still have our live webinars, so watch your emails. And then lastly, we've got the MCLU subscription, which stands for the Monthly Compliance and Legislation Update. And in there, it's just documentation and a 2-hour contact session every month that tells you of all the latest developments in our field. Auditing, accounting, tax, other legislation, employment law, and so on and so forth. Right. Please refer to the SAAA website there for subscription options. Right, and that brings me to the end. I trust that you enjoyed the technical summary videos, ladies and gentlemen. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you and goodbye.